Ivanka Trump likely believed her remarks would never escape that private room, until Jasmine Crockett turned them into a moment of national debate that left even opponents stunned. The Silverleaf Club in Scottsdale wasn't built for battles, but that evening, under chandeliers and fine dining, sparks flew. It was an invitation-only fundraiser, heavily guarded from cameras, with just under 50 wealthy donors and party power players gathered around linen-draped tables. Ivanka arrived fashionably late, polished and glowing, greeting the room with ease. She wasn't officially launching a campaign, but the whispers made it obvious this was the opening move. The dinner buzzed with small talk until the mood shifted. Someone, accounts differ whether they were from Dallas or Florida, brought up a certain Texas congresswoman. Not by name at first, just that loud one on TV. Laughter rippled. A guest recalled spotting her on MSNBC. Another voice at the table cracked a joke about Crockett trying to be the next AOC, only with a law degree. That's when Ivanka leaned back in her chair, lifted her glass, and let the words slip. She's just ghetto trash. The laugh that followed wasn't as strong this time. Some faces froze. It wasn't a speech, it wasn't a toast. It was delivered casually, as if no one would ever question it. Across the table, a young donor in a sand-colored blazer exchanged a sharp glance with the woman seated beside him, a seasoned D.C. operative turned consultant. She kept her expression neutral, but hours later, she quietly sent a text. Ivanka said something ugly about Crockett tonight. You want to know? That message landed with a reporter on the Hill, someone with a knack for catching whispers before they broke into headlines. By the next morning, 2 other attendees confirmed the phrasing. One even provided a scratchy voice memo recorded during the dinner. The sound quality was rough, but the words were unmistakable. By lunchtime, editors in Washington were reviewing it. By mid-afternoon, the story was live. Headline: Ivanka Trump accused of calling Representative Jasmine Crockett ghetto trash at closed-door fundraiser. The internet didn't bother waiting for fact checks. Screenshots raced across Twitter, Instagram feeds lit up, and YouTubers went live within the hour. One commentator called it straight out of the Mar-a-Lago playbook. Others demanded the Trump camp respond. In Washington, Jasmine Crockett was buried in committee files when her chief of staff, Andre McMillan, tapped lightly on the door. He stepped in, phone in hand, and placed it in front of her without a word. She scanned the headline once, then again, slower this time. No raised voice. No slam disk. Just a quiet line. So, that's what she thinks of me. Andre settled into the chair opposite her. She thinks she's untouchable behind a $2,000 a plate fundraiser. But someone in that room clearly wanted you to hear it. Jasmine turned toward the window. For a long moment, she said nothing, her eyes fixed on the skyline as if her thoughts were rolling past like train cars. Finally, she stood, smoothing the sleeves of her suit. No press release, she said firmly. Andre looked puzzled. Then what? She walked over to her laptop. Book me on MSNBC tonight. Live. He hesitated. You're sure? She nodded once. I won't yell. I won't stoop to her level. But I'll make sure every young black girl in this country hears what I say. Outside, a summer storm gathered over the Capitol, thunder curling in the distance. Inside, something quieter, but far stronger, was taking shape. And she wasn't the only one bracing to speak. Allies, critics, and rivals alike were already watching, waiting for the moment she would answer. The hours until airtime ticked by heavy and electric as Jasmine sat at her desk, one hand propping her cheek, the other scrolling steadily through her phone. The flood of tweets hadn't stopped all afternoon, some cheering her on, some defending Ivanka, and plenty too vile to dignify. Jasmine ignored them, the way she always did. But one clip froze her thumb mid-scroll. It was shaky cell phone footage from inside the Scottsdale fundraiser. Just 20 seconds. Murmured voices, the clink of glasses, and then Ivanka's tone cut through, muffled but unmistakable. She's ghetto trash. That's all she is. The recording was grainy, imperfect, but it didn't need to be clearer. The context was there. The disdain was there. The words were undeniable. Jasmine dropped her phone onto the desk like it had burned her. Andre leaned forward, his voice low. We already knew it was true. You didn't need to hear it yourself. I did, she replied, steady on the surface, though the pen clenched in her hand looked ready to snap in two. Andre fished a granola bar from his bag and held it out. Eat something. She waved it away. You haven't eaten since breakfast, he pressed. I'll eat after I speak. He studied her closely. You're sure you want to do this live? Jasmine nodded once. I want America to see my face and hear my voice. No es bien. No mis interpretación. And if she wants to call me trash again after that. Andre hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You know how they'll frame it. They'll paint you as the angry black woman. Say you're emotional, unhinged, dramatic. Jasmine turned to him, unblinking. Let them try. I've stared down contracts under cross-examination. I can handle Ivanka Trump. I've walked into federal court on 2 hours of sleep and 3 minutes of prep, Jasmine said, her pen still between her fingers. I've been called worse to my face, but I've never been silent. Not once. The air in the office held still for a beat. Then, with the faintest smirk, she added, let's show them what trash really talks like. Both she and Andre cracked the smallest of smiles. An hour later, Jasmine sat under the lights of MSNBC's D.C. studio. The makeup artist dusted her cheekbones, but she barely noticed. The producers offered prep questions twice. She refused twice. No scripts, no coaching. She wanted the words to be her own. Her segment moved up after a senator bailed, unwilling to risk a question about the Ivanka leak. That only meant more airtime for her. In the green room, as the countdown clock ticked down, Jasmine fixed her eyes on the floor. Her breathing slowed into a practice calm. Under her breath, barely audible, she murmured, trash bins. Trash burns. But trash doesn't break. The stage manager lifted 2 fingers. Then one. They were live. Host Carla Mendez leaned across the desk, her voice steady but her posture tense. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett joins us tonight. Representative, thank you for being here. Jasmine gave a short nod. Glad to be here. Carla went straight in. You've read the coverage. You've heard the leaked audio. The phrase ghetto trash, allegedly from Ivanka Trump, has dominated headlines all day. What's your response? Jasmine didn't flinch. My response is that those 2 words, ghetto trash, didn't start with Ivanka Trump. They've been around for generations. They carry a history of exclusion, of disdain, of coded contempt. And the fact that she feels comfortable using them says everything about where she stands. Carla tilted forward. Tell us more. And Jasmine did. For 4 steady minutes, Jasmine spoke with calm precision. She traced how ghetto once marked off whole communities with red lines, and how trash was the insult used against anyone who dared protest it. When you say ghetto trash, she told Carla, what you're really saying is, you don't belong here. But here's the problem. They can't lock the doors anymore. So instead, they try to shame the people walking through them. Carla looked shaken, but Jasmine pressed on. And if being unapologetically black, brilliant, and sharp-tongued makes me trash, then maybe America needs to ask itself, who took out the garbage before I got here? The studio went quiet. Carla started to speak, then stopped. Nothing more needed saying. Back in her dressing room, Jasmine removed her mic, tore open the granola bar, and muttered, one down. But outside those walls, the fire had already caught. A producer clipped the segment and posted it online. Within 20 minutes, it hit 400,000 views. By the time her car rolled down Constitution Avenue, her phone buzzed nonstop. Mentions, calls, group chats exploding. Andre glanced at her screen and grinned. You just broke the algorithm. Jasmine didn't answer. Jasmine watched the clip in silence, studying her own face the way a trial lawyer studies evidence. Was her tone steady? Did her words land? Play it again, she said. Undersmirkid. That's the 6th time. Still, he tapped the screen. When it ended, Jasmine crossed her arms. I meant every word. Andre nodded. Oh, we know. America knows. By morning, the clip had 3.8 million views. Celebrities reposted it. Professors cited it in lectures. Analysts praised it as measured and razor-sharp. But the reach was bigger than politics. In South Dallas, a teacher showed it to her 8th graders. What does she mean by they can't keep the door closed anymore? A barbershop played it on loop, one man saying, "This ain't just politics. This is about how we're all seen." In Michigan, a retired postal worker forwarded it to her church group. "We should talk about this Sunday." For every supporter, though, came a troll. Jasmine's inbox filled with the usual bile, racist slurs, mocking memes, accusations of playing the victim. Most she deleted without a glance. But one DM made her pause. It came from a woman in Fort Myers, Florida. "I used to vote red. But the way you spoke, calm, clear, real. I've never heard anyone talk like that on TV before. You didn't back down. I think I needed to see that. Thank you." Jasmine turned the phone toward Andre. "You think she's real?" He nodded. "People like her exist. They're just quiet until something wakes them up." It wasn't just voters noticing. On the Hill, colleagues who normally kept their distance started texting. Some sent nothing but clapping emojis. One message read simply, "That was fire." The biggest surprise came from a burner email, an anonymous Republican staffer. "We've heard worse in rooms like that. You're not overreacting. Stay loud." Back at her desk, Andre scrolled through a flood of media requests. "CBS wants you on tomorrow. On paye." Even the BBC. "Not happening," Jasmine replied. "One appearance was enough. Let the clip speak. If I keep explaining, people will start picking it apart." Andre hesitated. "So what now?" "We wait. We listen. I want to see who stays quiet, who twists it, and who shows up when it matters." He closed his laptop slowly. "You realize Ivanka still hasn't said a word." "I know," Jasmine said. "That's not power. It's strategy. She's waiting to see if it blows over." Andre leaned back. "Think it will." Jasmine walked to the window. Outside, protesters were already gathering on the Capitol steps, holding signs that read, "We are not trash," and "Speak loud, stand tall." "No," Jasmine said quietly. "Not this time." But while the public rallied behind her, private rooms in D.C. grew uneasy. And inside the Trump orbit, the pressure was starting to sting. By Friday, it wasn't just a trending clip, it was the national conversation. Cable networks replayed Jasmine's interview on a loop, pundits dissecting each line like scripture. Conservative radio hosts tried to dismiss it as theater, but even some grudgingly admitted her poise. "She never raised her voice," a Dallas AM host said. "She looked right into the camera and handed out a political whooping, old-school style." That ain't easy. Online, the energy was different. Fast, fiery, emotional. Hashtags like hashtag "We Are Not Trash," hashtag "Crockett Claps Back," and hashtag "Speak Loud Stand Tall" trended for a full day. TikTok creators set her words to montages of graduations, courtroom wins, neighborhood cleanups, and street protests. One video, posted by a single mother in Gary, Indiana, went viral. "They called us ghetto too. Said we'd never make it. But look at my son, the first in our family to go to college." Representative Crockett speaks for folks like us. In Los Angeles, an artist painted a mural on the side of a laundromat. Jasmine's face alongside the words, "If I'm trash, then America's had a sanitation problem since 1776. Someone slapped the mural's quote on T-shirts, and just like that, the movement had a tagline. But the shockwave wasn't only cultural, it was financial. Jasmine's campaign donations tripled in 48 hours. Grassroots money poured in. $10 here, $50 there. One woman from Minneapolis sent $3.17 with a note. "It's all I had after rent, but you're speaking for me." Even more startling, 2 veteran Republican donors, tech entrepreneurs from Colorado Springs, publicly announced they were rethinking their loyalty to the Trump family. One wrote, "When language like that goes unchecked, we all lose." Inside GOP circles, panic flared. At a closed-door meeting in Palm Beach, a senior strategist snapped. Why the hell did she say it all? Thinking it is bad politics. Saying it at a donor table? Unforgivable. No one had an answer. Ivanka, meanwhile, kept silent. Her feed rolled out glossy, pre-scheduled posts, family smiles, fashion shoots, curated quotes. No mention of Jasmine. No dinaid. No epalayi. And that silence rang louder than the slur. Back in Washington, Jasmine did the opposite of what everyone expected. She avoided cameras. No second press conference. No media blitz. Jasmine didn't flood her feed with posts. She just went back to work, briefings, hearings, calls with constituents, as if the world hadn't tilted. But people found her anyway. At a Capitol Hill coffee shop, an older man stopped her in line. "You Crockett?" he asked. She nodded carefully. He lifted his phone, paused on her MSNBC clip. "Watched this 3 times last night. Made me think about my own daughter. I was proud of you." She blinked, caught off guard. "Thank you, sir." He tipped his head. Make him uncomfortable. That's how change starts. Back at the office, Andre was drowning in emails. Over 2,300 unopened just today. "Filter for real people," Jasmine said. "Teachers? Single moms? Folks who don't usually write." She nodded. "Those are the ones I want." Jasmine had always known politics was theater, but this was different. She wasn't branding herself. She wasn't chasing viral. She'd struck something older, deeper, a nerve America kept pretending didn't exist. That night, as she walked home, heels clicking on the pavement, a group of young people on the corner began clapping. She raised a hand in thanks, but didn't stop walking. She didn't need to say a word. And while her influence swelled, Ivanka's silence no longer looked like strategy. It was beginning to look like surrender. This time, the wound cut straight to identity. It was personal, visceral, unshakable. An insult people could hear in their bones. And it wasn't aimed at opponents in Washington. It was aimed at them. By Monday evening, cable news cheered it bluntly. Ivanka's silence equals consent? Clips of Jasmine's speech played side by side with Ivanka's speech photo, the contrast damning. Conservative columnists began hedging their language, calling the situation unfortunate optics or a distraction Republicans don't need. On the Hill, whispers turned into strategy sessions. A Senate aide muttered to a reporter off record, "If she doesn't shut this down, she becomes the story. And when she's the story, we all pay." Inside Ivanka's camp, the tension boiled. Staffers argued late into the night over draft statements that never made it past her desk. Denial, deflection, spin. She rejected them all. "They'll move on," she said flatly, closing her phone. "They always do." But America didn't move on. The clip didn't fade. It multiplied. Protesters painted her silence on cardboard. "Nothing to say?" In Detroit, students marched with Jasmine's words booming from a speaker. In Houston, a church sermon quoted her directly. Ivanka's calculation, that the Trump name could outlast anything, was beginning to look less like strength and more like hubris. By Thursday morning, the cracks had become fissures. Major newspapers ran with Denise Tran's line as a headline, "A losing strategy." The PAC's lukewarm statement was dissected on every network, branded cowardly, deflective, an insult on top of an insult. Meanwhile, Jasmine's silence was working like fuel. Every time she walked past cameras without stopping, the clip replayed instead. Every time she declined an interview, her words from that first night grew louder. She didn't need to add more. The country was doing it for her. Donors were restless. A Florida billionaire was overheard at a fundraiser asking, "If she can't handle one sentence, how's she supposed to handle a campaign?" Conservative strategists privately admitted the damage was no longer containable. And then came the poll. By Thursday evening, a reputable national survey showed a stunning result. Ivanka's favorability among suburban women, her supposed firewall, had dropped 19 points in less than a week. Jasmine's name recognition, meanwhile, had doubled. That night, as pundits pored over the numbers, Jasmine sat at her kitchen table in sweatpants, eating leftover takeout, scrolling through emails from teachers and mothers and retirees. She wasn't chasing the spotlight. She didn't have to. It had already found her. But Ivanka? The spotlight was becoming a searchlight, and it was no longer just following her. It was hunting her. This is razor sharp. You're tightening the contrast between Jasmine's restraint and Ivanka's paralysis beautifully. If you want, here's how we could heighten the tension in the next beat, turning Jasmine's silence into proof of strength while showing Ivanka's world starting to fracture from the inside. That afternoon, cable producers were still begging Jasmine's team for airtime. One appearance, just one. A CNN booker pleaded over voicemail. She ignored it. The note in her drawer was louder than any studio spotlight. But on the other side, Ivanka's orbit was wobbling. A leaked email from one of her senior advisors surfaced on Politico. We need to get her in front of a camera this weekend. Every hour she hides, we bleed. By evening, donors weren't whispering anymore. A PAC strategist in Ohio went on background with a reporter, saying she's toxic right now. She doesn't understand. This isn't D.C. scandal theater. This is a wound people feel in their own homes. And still Jasmine said nothing. Her restraint wasn't empty. It was deliberate, weaponized. Every silence was a rebuttal. Every unanswered question was its own kind of statement. That night, Andre looked across the office and asked quietly, "How long can you hold this line?" Jasmine didn't look up from the constituent letters she was reading. As long as it takes. The silence isn't mine to break. It's hers. By Sunday evening, the donor crisis had a name inside Ivanka's camp: the freeze. Commitments weren't being canceled outright. They were just stalling. Calls went unanswered. Checks went back in review. Pledges that once arrived overnight now lingered in limbo. It was death by hesitation. One finance director described it bluntly in a leaked memo. No one wants to be first out the door, but no one wants to be last either. Meanwhile, Jasmine didn't change her routine. Church in the morning, a stop at a local food bank in the afternoon. She carried bags, shook hands, said almost nothing about the scandal. The cameras followed anyway. Her silence was becoming a spectacle of its own. That night, MSNBC ran a segment with the cheering, "When not speaking speaks loudest." Inside Trump world, fury simmered. Ivanka snapped at an aide, "I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do." But for once, no one pushed back. They had seen the numbers. They had heard the donors whisper. And they knew this wasn't about fairness anymore. It was about math. Donors wanted answers. Would she apologize? Would she deny? Should they risk going public with support? But Ivanka refused to give them anything clean. Her strategy had always been control. Control the message, the access, the headlines. Now the headlines were writing themselves, and her donors were running out of patience. At a closed-door event in Phoenix, an oil executive pulled the plug on a planned $200,000 appearance fee for Ivanka. His words cut like glass. "I don't want this trash fire anywhere near my brand." The irony was brutal. A few days later, Jasmine opened a letter that told a very different story. It came from Linda Wong, a billionaire tech philanthropist in Portland. Inside was a check for $250,000 made out to Jasmine's new voter outreach initiative, along with a note: "You didn't shout. You didn't drag anyone. You showed strength. That's where change lives." Jasmine read it in her office, then handed it to Andre. "Do you know how many women get talked about like that and never get a chance to answer?" she asked. "Too many," Andre said, leaning back in his chair. Jasmine looked down at the check, then back at him. "Let's use this to amplify their voices. Build a platform they can stand on." Andre nodded slowly. "This thing's not just about you anymore, Jazz." She already knew. Every text, every donation, every teenager tagging her on TikTok, every older woman calling her office just to say thank you. It all pointed to one thing. She had become a vessel for something much bigger than herself. But even as donations poured in, the critics circled. Right-wing columnists called her silence stage drama. Conservative think tanks churned out op-eds accusing her of weaponizing victimhood. Jasmine didn't bite. She didn't need to. The public was already doing the work for her. A viral thread from a political science professor in Cincinnati cut through the noise. What Representative Crockett did wasn't just a clapback. It was a masterclass in cultural translation. She took a coded slur, unmasked it, and handed America a mirror. The outrage at her response. More than at the slur itself. That's the story. Meanwhile, Republican donor circles were fraying. One GOP strategist admitted anonymously to Reuters, "We've lost control of the conversation." And Crockett, she's the one driving it now. The cracks spread inward. Ivanka's longtime media advisor walked away quietly, citing creative differences. Others stayed, but everyone was scanning for lifeboats. Jasmine's numbers, by contrast, only went up. Not just with her base, but across party lines, age groups, geography. That week, a Des Moines Register poll showed 42% of independents now viewed her more favorably after the MSNBC segment. Among women under 40, the number spiked to 61%. And in the Philadelphia Inquirer, a former GOP donor, Robert Donnelly, put it bluntly, she didn't just survive it. She owned it. And Ivanka? She disappeared. I might not agree with her politics, but I'd trust her to tell me the truth. Can't say that about Ivanka anymore. Jasmine didn't celebrate. Not publicly. Instead, she stayed late in her office, headset on, returning calls to donors herself. Not the ones with six-figure checks, but the ones who gave $5 and left notes that felt like oxygen. But just as her image soared, a different kind of opposition stirred. The kind that doesn't show its face, the kind that works in shadows, sharp-toothed and patient. The air inside the Tallahassee town hall was damp and heavy. Folding chairs sagged in crooked rows. A handwritten sign on the podium read, "Voices that matter." It was a last-minute gathering, no national press, no corporate sponsors, just local organizers, college kids, retirees, and people who needed to be heard. Jasmine hadn't come to talk about Ivanka. She didn't even say her name. That chapter was already bigger than her. What mattered now was whether she could turn fleeting attention into lasting power. This would be her first time speaking at length since the MSNBC interview. Live, unedited, with no anchor to steer the moment. The room fell still as she stepped to the podium. She adjusted the mic, steady but deliberate. Her voice wasn't booming. It didn't need to be. "I've been called a lot of things," she began. Outspoken, loud, aggressive, ghetto, trash. The words hung heavy in the room. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd as Jasmine let the silence stretch before continuing, her eyes sweeping across the faces in front of her. "Here's what I've learned about labels. They don't define us. They define what makes other people uncomfortable about who we've always been." Heads nodded. From the second row, an older man whispered, "Say that." Jasmine leaned forward, her voice cutting through the stillness. The word ghetto doesn't mean what it used to mean. It doesn't mean poor. It doesn't mean dangerous. It means unwelcome. That's the message. You don't belong here. You talk too real. You carry your history too openly. A single clap broke out. Then another. The sound swelled, then quieted again. "They want me quiet," she said. "But silence is how we got here. Silence is how they keep writing the story while we're still living it." She wasn't reading notes. She wasn't pacing. She spoke like someone who had been holding this truth in her lungs for years and finally let it breathe. "They tell us we should be grateful just to sit at the table. But they forget we built the damn table." This time the applause roared louder. A woman stood, hand pressed to her chest, nodding hard. From the back, someone shouted, "Go ahead." Jasmine paused, sipped water, then dropped her voice low, serious, deliberate. "I'm not here to fight one woman. I'm here so the next generation never has to explain why their confidence makes people uncomfortable, why their voice is treated like a threat, why their truth gets stamped as trash." The silence that followed was thick, not with unease but with attention. And then she closed. "If the price of honesty is being called trash, then I'll keep taking out the garbage." The room erupted. Not chaotic applause, but that sharp, knowing kind. The kind that travels home with you. The kind you still feel in your throat hours later. After the speech, she didn't rush out. Jasmine stayed. She shook hands. She hugged elders. She took selfies with teenagers in HBCU sweatshirts. A young woman, maybe 20, stepped forward with tears pooling in her eyes and whispered, "You made me feel seen." Jasmine clasped her hand. "You are seen. Don't ever shrink." That moment alone might have been enough. But later that night, a grainy, low-res video shot by a college student began to spread. Jasmine didn't post it. It posted itself. By sunrise, it had 6.4 million views. A popular podcaster called it the best political speech in the last 5 years. Commentators compared her poise to Barbara Jordan. Others said she made Michelle Obama look diplomatic by comparison. But this wasn't about comparisons anymore. Jasmine had crossed into new territory, out of defense mode, into something bigger, something harder to control, something much harder to shut down. And her critics felt it. The narrative shifted overnight. Is Jasmine Crockett becoming the new face of political honesty? She never answered. She didn't have to. The more her voice carried, the more desperate her opponents became. And what came next wasn't just backlash. It was sabotage. By Monday, the hit pieces were rolling in. Conservative blogs, fringe outlets, different platforms, same playbook. Representative Crockett's past financial disputes raise eyebrows. Who is Jasmine Crockett really? The hidden radicalism behind MSNBC's Darling. The sources were thin, the claims weaker still. One article dug up a missed utility bill from 2011. Another recycled a landlord dispute from law school, something she'd addressed publicly years ago. Jasmine scrolled through the first few in silence, then tossed her phone onto the couch. "They're fishing," she muttered. From the doorway, Andre folded his arms. "They're drowning," Andre said. He was right. The articles weren't sticking. None had weight. But that was never the point. The goal was to cloud her name, kick enough dust into the air that people squinted when they heard it. Then came the louder smear. A primetime host on a right-wing cable network promised an exclusive recording of Jasmine making anti-America remarks at a private fundraiser. They teased it all day. When it finally aired, the so-called bombshell was just Jasmine saying, "This country was never built to include us. We had to claw our way in." That was it. Jasmine said nothing online, but the clip spread anyway. And this time, it spread in her favor. Teachers, activists, veterans, even military families reposted it with captions like, "Where's the lie? She's telling the truth, and you're scared of it. Say it again, louder." The smear was collapsing in real time. But Jasmine knew better. In politics, bad faith doesn't retreat. It reloads. One morning, a staffer rushed into her office holding a printout. "They're dragging your mom into it now," she said. The headline, "Representative Crockett's mother once arrested in civil rights protest. Is this the family legacy?" Jasmine stared at it, face unreadable. Andre watched her carefully. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm proud of her," Jasmine said flatly. She was arrested for sitting at a whites-only lunch counter. If that's all they've got, we're winning. They dug deeper anyway. One outlet accused her of misusing campaign funds, citing unconfirmed reports. A local Amarillo station ran with it, then yanked the story 36 hours later after confirming the allegations were false. Jasmine never called them, never threatened legal action, never posted a rebuttal. She didn't have to. By now, the public had drawn their own lines. They saw it unfolding. They'd seen this playbook before, rolled out against Shirley Chisholm, Ilhan Omar, and countless others. Manufactured scandals, misquoted soundbites, racial dog whistles dressed up as concern. This time, people weren't fooled. A hashtag began trending. Hashtag, "We know the playbook." It wasn't just a slogan. It was a warning, a rallying cry, a refusal to fall for the same tricks again. Jasmine's team adjusted their strategy. No more defense, full offense. They poured energy into voter drives in Memphis, Tulsa, Oakland. They launched a mentorship initiative for young black girls interested in public service. Teachers emailed by the dozen, asking permission to use her MSNBC clip in civics lessons. It was bigger now, no longer about one slur, no longer just about one woman. It had become a movement, and power was paying attention. Donors who once angled for Ivanka's attention were now quietly asking for meetings with Jasmine's staff. Private lunches, careful introductions. Some were sincere, shaken by her words. Others were simply pragmatic. Power was shifting, and they didn't want to be on the wrong side of history. One meeting in Baton Rouge summed it up. A mid-level venture capitalist, white, mid-50s, leaned across the table in a private room above a wine bar. "I used to think people like you were dangerous," he said. Jasmine folded her arms. "And now I think people like you are necessary." She didn't smile, didn't flinch. "We've always been necessary," she said. "You're just late." He nodded. "Still here, though." That night, sitting on the edge of her hotel bed, Jasmine scrolled through a message from a teenage girl in New Jersey. "My teacher made us watch your speech. I used to be scared to talk in class because of my accent, but now I raise my hand. You made me feel like I matter." Jasmine read the message 3 times. She didn't reply. Instead, she screenshotted it and dropped it into a private folder on her phone labeled, "Why I Keep Going." But the biggest shift wasn't going to come from the public. It was going to come from inside Ivanka's own orbit. It started with an encrypted email. Subject line: I was there. It was worse than reported. Andre almost deleted it. He'd seen too many trolls, clout chasers, superfans promising bombshells. But this one was different. No flatte, no teatrix. Just a few flat lines. I was at the Silverleaf event. I worked logistics for the Trump family for 4 years. I no longer do. I heard what Ivanka said. The media didn't even get the full quote. If you're willing to talk off record, I'll share everything. Andre forwarded it to Jasmine without commentary. Within minutes, her phone lit up. We vet them quietly, she said. No leaks, no tweets, no press. He agreed. The next evening, they sat in a dim, wood-paneled room of a law office in Jackson, Mississippi. Jasmine's counsel was at her side. Andre leaned in the corner, silent. Across from them, a woman in her early 30s sat with both hands clenched around a bottle of water, like she might break it. She introduced herself only as Lauren. I handled advance planning for Ivanka's personal appearances, she said. Guest lists, travel security, media coordination. Scottsdale was mine. Jasmine didn't say a word. She just let the silence stretch until Lauren filled it. She didn't just call you ghetto trash. Lauren's voice shook. That's the part everyone knows. What they didn't report, Lauren continued, her voice unsteady, was what she said after. Jasmine leaned forward. Go on. Lauren exhaled, steadying herself. She said, the louder they are, the dumber they sound. All they know how to do is posture and play victim. Let her bark on cable news. That's all she'll ever be good at. The room went still. Lauren pulled out her phone. I didn't record it that night, but I wrote it down. Word for word. I emailed it to myself from a burner account, time-stamped. It's real. She slid the phone across the table. Jasmine read in silence, her face unreadable. I'm not giving this to the press, Lauren said softly. I just needed you to know it wasn't a slip. It wasn't heat of the moment. It was deliberate, cruel, entitled. Jasmine finally spoke. Why now? Lauren's hands trembled around the bottle of water. Because I used to think I was serving something bigger. But I wasn't. I was just helping them hold power at the expense of people like you. Jasmine studied her, not angry, just locked in. Thank you for coming. That takes more courage than you know. Lauren nodded. If you need me to testify, I will. Jasmine shook her head. That time will come. For now, stay safe. Let's carry it. When the meeting ended, Jasmine and Andre stepped out into the thick Mississippi night. Neither spoke as they walked to the car. Only once the doors shut did Andre finally break the silence. So what do we do with it? Jasmine answered without hesitation. We build with it, not burn. They held the evidence close. No leaks, no press conference, not yet. Instead, her team worked the shadows. Through quiet channels, they let certain donors know. We have the full truth. Do you really want to be standing next to her when it drops? 3 donors pulled out within 48 hours. Another flipped, sending Jasmine's PAC a 6-figure check. And Lauren? She faded back into the dark, but not before sending Jasmine one last note. I used to think power was about knowing everything first. Now I think it's about knowing when to stop protecting the wrong people. The impact was subtle, but immediate. Ivanka canceled 2 upcoming appearances, Boise, then Wilmington. The official excuse was scheduling conflicts. Insiders knew better. Her brand was bleeding support, and no glossy family photos could bandage it. Meanwhile, Jasmine moved differently. No national cameras, no polished entourage. Just showing up, school board meetings in Cincinnati, women's roundtables in Fresno, small business forums in Mobile. She listened. She asked questions. She stayed. The press noticed the shift. The headlines stopped calling her the fiery freshman from Texas. Now they use words like formidable, measured, influential. Voters noticed too. At an open mic event in Des Moines, an older black woman stood and said, "You didn't just shut her down. You did it without raising your voice. You reminded us how dignity speaks." Jasmine smiled. Sometimes the loudest clapback is calm. But calm was not passive. And what came next would push her from movement leader to national figure. It began in a room built for intimidation. The marble halls of the Senate hearing chamber in Washington, D.C. cold, echoing, designed to remind witnesses of their place. Those walls had heard centuries of power, some righteous, some rotten. Now, they were about to hear Jasmine Crockett. The hearing's title was bland, bureaucratic, rhetoric and responsibility in political leadership. But everyone knew what it was really about, the slur, the silence, the firestorm that followed. Jasmine hadn't asked to be invited. She hadn't lobbied. The invitation came only after weeks of mounting pressure from advocacy groups, restless donors, even a few moderates across the aisle who finally admitted something had to be said. Real harm, Jasmine said, her tone steady, isn't always in the slurs that make headlines. It's in what gets whispered behind velvet curtains and oak doors. A ripple moved through the chamber. Some senators shifted uncomfortably. Others buried their eyes in notes, knowing exactly which room she meant. Words matter, she pressed on. Not because they bruise feelings, but because they become policy. Because they justify cruelty. Because they excuse violence. Her voice never rose, but the weight behind it did. I'm not angry, she said, letting the silence catch. I am awake, and I am tired of being the one expected to explain why basic respect is somehow negotiable. Her gaze flicked, just for a heartbeat, towards Senator Willow Dunn, a reliable Ivanka ally. Dunn's eyes dropped to the table. Then Jasmine shifted, her tone softening. To the young girl in Tulsa who sent me a drawing of herself at a podium like this one. I see you. You don't have to change your voice, your name, or your hair to belong here. You already do. The gallery broke. Applause burst from the back rows. Community leaders, teachers, students, even a few familiar faces from marches and vigils years ago. Their clapping filled the marble chamber, defiant against the hush of the senators. For the first time, the imbalance was visible, the power at the tables versus the people in the seats. And in that moment, Jasmine's voice carried further than any gavel could. Senator Browder cleared his throat, trying to pull the moment back under control. Thank you, Congresswoman. We appreciate your perspective. A Republican from Nevada leaned forward. With respect, Congresswoman, are you suggesting that our political system is inherently biased? Jasmine met his gaze without flinching. I'm not suggesting it, she said. I'm living proof. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, less like an ending, more like a reckoning. Outside, the marble steps exploded with cameras. Flashbulbs, microphones, shouts. Congresswoman, should Ivanka Trump issue a public apology? Jasmine didn't slow her stride. She can apologize or not. Either way, I'm good. Another reporter pushed in. What do you say to critics who claim you're using this moment for political gain? That stopped her. Jasmine turned toward the crowd. If speaking the truth gains something, she said, steady and calm, then maybe that truth was long overdue. Back at her office, she finally sank into her chair. Andre walked in carrying a cardboard box. Fan mail, he grinned. Mostly kids. He opened the box, letters scrawled in pencil, stick figure drawings, one envelope stuffed with glitter. On top, a crayon picture from a child in Savannah, and taped to it, a friendship bracelet. Kid says it's for strength, Andre explained. Jasmine slipped the bracelet over her wrist. Faded yarn, uneven knots, but sturdy. She stared at it for a long moment. This, she whispered, is bigger than a headline, bigger than a clip. Andre nodded. This is legacy stuff. Jasmine glanced out the window. The Capitol dome loomed against the night sky, unmoved, unchanged. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she was staring at power. She felt like she was wearing it. She turned back, her smile soft but certain. Let's keep going, because the words meant to break her had built something instead. A movement rooted in dignity, shaped by truth, strengthened by every voice that refused to be silenced. And if this story moved you, share it. Stay loud. Keep showing up, because the fight isn't over, and every voice matters.